Yeah, we're live. 7:09. Man, I missed it by a few. I was a little busy. Frosty cold beverage. Tonight, we're going to talk about a video I'm working on. I haven't put it up yet. I thought I was going to get to, but we had a bunch of stuff I had to do today. So I'm going to put it up probably later tonight or early tomorrow. And it's a cool test. Actually, it's a double test. 2 motors, both 5-liter Fords, and both of them with positive displacement blowers, which I don't do a lot of testing on, but positive displacement blowers are awesome, just like any kind of boost. So one, Kenny Bell, twin screw supercharger, EFI 5-liter. The other one, a carbureted 302 with a Wyand Holly, I think it's a 174 Roots blower. And the cool thing is, as I always do or try to do, is that we run it with like in a bunch of different configurations. So with both, excuse me, with both of those motors, we ran multiple camshafts, including the stock one. So you guys can kind of see, hey, look, this is what if, because I usually recommend guys when they do boost, whether it's a junkyard LS or a 5-liter Explorer, even a Coyote, whatever it is, whatever you have, the stock motor will work and it will work under boost. The stock camshaft will obviously work, but it's just going to work a lot better if you put more camshaft in it, because the motor itself, even NA, is just going to work better with some kind of camshaft in it. And this is another video that shows you exactly that, obviously on a different engine family than the LS stuff I've been doing lately. So on the Kenny Bell Supercharged version of the 5-liter, that way back, this was run with 3 different camshafts and at a couple of different boost levels, which is good. And we show the effect of power and boost when we do these cam upgrades. And the same thing with the carbureted supercharged version. We ran that with a couple of different camshafts. I even ran it with different cylinder heads and stuff, and at different boost levels again. And you can kind of see what the effect is, what the shape of the curve is with the stock cam, what the shape of the curve is with an aftermarket cam and other modifications that we made to it. And it shows the thing that by now, most of you guys, I'm sure the regular guys that are here on the live feed, but we obviously get a lot of other guys that watch this video after that, after the fact, and they're not the usual 2 live crew. But you guys will also understand that when you increase the power output or the efficiency of the naturally aspirated motor, it affects the boost supplied by the blower. And the reason it does that is because you've made what's underneath the blower more efficient. So now the blower doesn't have to work as hard. The boost will go down. The airflow goes up. And I know that's hard for a lot of people to realize, like, well, wait, Richard, doesn't more boost equal more power? Yes and no. Because in the case of a blower like this, whether it's a centrifugal blower, a Roots blower, or a twin screw blower, if you're spinning the blower at the same speed and it's making a given boost level, if you then improve the power output of what's underneath it, in this case by changing out the stock fairly restrictive camshaft and putting something decent in there, in any way decent at all, what happens is the blower is still spinning the same speed, and the blower spinning at a given speed will draw a certain amount of air in and then push that amount of air in the other side. The amount of air that it draws in and pushes in the other side is going to be a function of a number of things. One is the displacement of the blower. So for every revolution, it will theoretically pump a certain amount. It doesn't always do the same amount, because we'll talk about why right now. One thing is if there's a restriction on the top side of it, like if you have, in the case of our 177 blower, 174 blower, if you have too small of a carburetor, too small of a throttle opening for it, it won't grab the right of the prerequisite amount of air, so it can't process that and blow it to the other side. The other thing is if you have a restriction on the other side of it. So the more boost on the other side, meaning more restriction that you have, the less airflow that blower is going to process. And that's all a Roots blower is doing, is processing air from one side of the blower to the other. Sometimes they enter in the back, sometimes they enter in the top, and then exit out the bottom. Whatever they're doing, that's what they're doing. They're processing air. So if you lower the boost pressure that the blower has to work against on the other side, say for instance by adding a good camshaft or cylinder heads or making the motor bigger, just making it more efficient, the amount of the boost that it has to work against will go down. And then what that does magically is it allows it to grab more air on the top. And so it processes more air with each revolution. And you see that as a drop in boost and an increase in power, which is really, in my opinion, the best of both worlds. And so that's exactly what we're going to see. So you guys are getting a little head start on the future test, but that's exactly what we're going to see. And we see the same thing on the Kenny Bell. The Kenny Bell is also positive displacement supercharger. It's different than the Roots blower, than the Holley Wyand Roots blower. For one, it's fuel injected and not carbureted. But more importantly, it's a twin screw and not a Roots blower. So it doesn't have the big lobes. It has a screw. There's actual internal compression offered by a twin screw blower. Typically, a twin screw blower is more efficient, so that meaning that it takes less power to drive it. And also the discharge temperature coming out of it at any given boost level is going to be lower than it is from most Roots blowers. We don't need to get into the argument about which one's better. They both do great things and both make boost and both make power. The guys that manufacture these will obviously bicker back and forth wildly, but they both do good things. And we did on the Kenny Bell one with the twin screw on it. The thing that I didn't like about that application versus the carbureted Roots blower that we use is that on the carbureted Roots blower, we had a carburetor which was feeding air. It was the air valve basically to determine how much air could get into the blower. But the other good thing, and the thing that is really beneficial, is that it's also supplying fuel. So there's fuel going into the blower. And this does two things. One, it lubricates the blower because that blower needs to have that. You can't, a lot of those Roots superchargers, you can't run them dry. If you run them dry for any length of time, ask Gale Banks, and I'm sure he knew this going in, but if you try to run them dry, you'll seize the blower up eventually. They don't like doing that. So they like to have fuel going through them because it helps lubricate them. The other thing that it does is we've seen all the time in any kind of blow through boosted application, like we're blowing through a carburetor, it also is very good at bringing the charge temperature down. So whether you're running pump gas or race gas, or even better would be E85, because putting an E85 carburetor on top of the blower works very, very well. I know I've tested that. We've run twin E85 carburetors on top of a fairly good 671 blower, and compared to running gas, it makes a big difference in power, as we have come to see with the 85 on almost all boosted stuff. Not as much the NA stuff, but on the boosted stuff, big power changes. So having fuel go through the blower, lubrication and extra power, and then if we didn't try it way back then in this test, but if you added E85 to the mix, you'd have an even lower charge temperature. The thing about, and that's good on that carbureted version, but on the Kenny Bell blower, one, no intercooler. On that 5-liter kit that he used to sell, and I think that they've reintroduced it, 5-liter kit, no intercooler. That's unfortunate because it has a lot of potential now, especially now that they have their bigger blowers. When they first started out, 1.5 blowers, I think, was kind of the thing. And then they went up to bigger and bigger ones now. But there's no intercooler. And also, they don't have fuel going through the blower. The fuel is injected down at the ports like all of the 5-liter manifolds are. So it's in the port at the end of the intake port of the intake manifold right before the cylinder head. You know, good for equal distribution and all that, but very little time to make it, to have extra time to cool the charge air like it does with the carburetor. So even though the twin screw is going to be more efficient than a Roots blower, it doesn't effectively have the same kind of intercooling. Now we could have, and we didn't way back then on that one either. We didn't run E85 on that test. And had I had it available and known about it, I'm sure that I would have, because especially on a non-intercooled version like that, we definitely would have stepped up to E85 because it was the go-to thing. As it is, we did step up to a race gas mixer because we turned the boost up a fair amount, not a ton, but we were looking to try to exceed a certain number when we had it, because that's what happens when you're running on the dyno, is that you get close to, okay, it's right at 197 horsepower. Well, we have to make 200, right? I mean, that has to be the number. Or if it's right at 798 horsepower, we got to make 800. Whatever that thing is, you've got to get over that hump. And I think in the case of the Supercharged 302, I think 500 was our number. And so we had to make sure that it got over that 500 number, because, you know, that's the thing is, once you see a power number, you know, first it's 300 and then it's 350 and 400 and 450. and then you start seeing it go up. And especially everybody else that's around during the dyno session, you know, all the guys from Kenny Bell and the guys from West Tech, and it's just like, well, you can't stop there, right? I mean, it's so easy. You've already made all this power. So you need more. You need to turn it up. You need to do whatever you got to do. Put bigger headers on it. You know, we could have run E85. You need to, you know, put thinner oil in, or whatever kind of trick that you can do to get that number so that we have that number. Because you don't want to just say that it made 500 if it made 498 or 499. That's not officially a 500 number. And as often happens when we're dyno testing, while we're making the run and you see the digital readout, you may see a 500 number flash up on the digital readout during the run. But then when you go to the dyno data, it doesn't display on the data. It says, instead of 500 that you saw, it says 499.8. Because when it grabbed the number to put it in the data, it didn't grab it at the time that the 500 number flashed. And it was only 499.8 when it grabbed that number. So it didn't get you your 500 that you were so desiring. And so, you know, sometimes we have to run it again, or take a little fuel away, or add a little fuel, or add some timing, or whatever we have to do, whatever tricks we have in our bag. We do that to try to get more and more power, and so try to get over the number, especially if you're that close. You know, if you're at 475, then you're like, I'm not going to worry about getting 500 unless you have a big trick. That would be a pulley, you know, more boost, or E85 would be another good one that's going to get a pretty big number. But if you've already thrown the kitchen sink at it and you're only left with little things, then you're not going to get an extra 25. You may get 3 or 4 or 5 might be possible, cool it off and all the tricks, but you're not going to get really big numbers like you would if you still look over in your quiver and find 85 pulley, timing, whatever, and then an intercooler. You know, you can get some pretty big power numbers. But that's the video I'm working on now, and it's, you know, we're going to see the same kinds of things that we see. I don't think that this was a 144, but a 144 will work. It just doesn't make a ton of power. It'd be good on a mild small block, but you'll be limited in the power that you can get. I remember seeing those kinds of blowers way back when they were doing a test. I think Hot Rod did a thing. Hot Rod or Carcraft did a thing where they put it on some kind of Camaro and drove it all around the United States or whatever. But that's what it was. It was they put that blower. And I remember reading the book that the guys from B&M did, because they had all those blowers and they did all the testing. And I really, really like the effort that they put into that stuff, because they tested a lot of things individually, tested big port heads and ported heads, different blower sizes, different engine combinations, and, you know, displacements and stuff. So they did a lot of cool stuff. And that's the kind of testing I like. Obviously, that's the kind of stuff I do and the kind of stuff I bring to you guys. So that's what's coming up. And I don't know what's coming up after that. Somebody asked a question about the 2.2. We're waiting on getting those Dodge motors fixed. The 2.2 will be first, and then the 2.5 will be after that. Let's see. So let's see what kind of questions you got. Tim, I was looking at let's see, Tim's got a M90 question. I was looking at the flow map for an M90 Gen 5 blower, and they move a ton of air. You should be able to get 470 horsepower from a stock one if you spin it fast enough. Well, I'm told, Tim, that on those M90 Gen 5 blowers, I was told guys made over 500 at the tire with those. Now, those were modified versions with really, really small pulleys on them, like 2.5-inch pulleys or something. And that they were ported on the inlet side and ported on the discharge side also. I haven't seen that happen, but that's what I'm told that they've done, guys that are racing them and going all out on them. What about a Whipple with carbs? Yeah, Whipple has blowers that you can run carburetors on. And it's a twin screw like a Kenny Bell. It's a little bit different design, but it's still a twin screw. Yeah, the E85 is a lot cheaper for me than gasoline is, and it's a lot whole lot cheaper than race gas is, and that's why I use it on almost all the stuff at Westech. Yeah, Mike, the boost that you make, and I'm sure you know, is a function of, we easily made 10 pounds on a stock 302. Making 10 pounds on a modified one is a whole different thing. It's easy to make boost when you have a restrictive motor underneath it. $177 on 454. That test, Kevin, that test might be up. I ran that blower on a 454. We had it in our 1977 Chevy big block dually that we called Max, because it was blue, and it was the Blue Max, if you guys have ever seen that movie. And we put it on there because the motor was kind of soft. It was kind of hurt in 2 cylinders. And so we thought, well, instead of rebuilding it, obviously we're going to be towing trailers across the country and we have to go up hills. So instead of rebuilding the motor, we just put a blower on it, and we drove that blower on the 455 all around the country, and it worked great. It worked much better once we put a good motor together and ran that. But ultimately, that thing is fairly restrictive. But I'm thinking that we made 550 to 570 horsepower with one of those on the big block. Tenor E85 typically works better with higher compression and or boost. The 256 blower works good. We also ran one of those, stepped up to that blower from the 177 or 174. I don't even know which one it is, but stepped up to that, and then up to a I think up to a 671. But the 256 was very comparable to the 671. How about a test between a budget VS Racing and a Force Performance? That's going to be more. That's not going to have anything to do with budget. That's going to have more to do with the specs on the particular turbos that you test. Like, they don't have 2 equal turbos that are the same specs. One of them is theirs and one of them is VS's, and then you would test those to see if one of them is better than the other, because one of them costs less. The turbos are going to be different, and however different they are is going to determine what they do that's different. Let's see. How will a low lift cam work on my 5.7, on my 5.3? Yes, it will. Any cam that you put in there will work before you put your blower on. What size turbo and specs are you running on the Dodge 4-cylinders? I have a number of different turbos that we can try. We have a stock one from the 84. We have a Turbos Unleashed, some kind of upgrade turbo. I'm not sure what the specs on that one are. I have a max speeding GT3076, a max speeding GT3582. We have the GT35. I have some 7875s if we want to get real, and some T4 S475s, a T4 S480 that I can borrow. I have a really small GT20, I think, but I think that's probably too small for that one. But I have a variety of different turbos we can try. Gene, you want to do a turbo test on pump gas? That's just going to be not going to show you what the turbos do. Pump E85 is way too unreliable. You mean it's unreliable and that you don't get the same thing every time from the pump? That may be true, but because you have so much safety margin, it doesn't matter. If it's E85 or E75 or E70, it's still going to make the same power. 144 would be too small for a big block. We didn't spin it very fast, although it did have a really tiny pulley on it the way that it came. E85 just lost the government subsidies. Oh, that's not good. Can an LS have a 6-inch stroke? We've only done 4.5 or 4.6. See, Ark knows what Blue Max is. George Papard. He was an ace, World War II. I don't know what the cost is to dyno your motor at West Tech. You'd have to call them and find out. What's the highest compression run E85? You can run E85 on a lot higher than 10.5 to 1. Is Fury Wilder a boxing match? Is that what people are talking about? Or MMA or something? Have you done anything on the Holley split single plane? I have not. I've run other split single planes like the mast ones, and we know what they do. It does what every single plane does. What can make more power on a 462 valve? A turbo will make more power. Can you engrave the cad blowers? What am I supposed to put on them? They're not even mine. How much damage do superchargers make when over boosted? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what your question is. If you overspin the blower, it's not a problem with boost. It's usually a bearing problem with the blowers, or the rotors can touch, which is also not good. 4.8. It depends on what your cemetery. Depends on what you're doing with your 4.8. I usually pick a small cam, a stage 1 truck cam, or a torque cam. Maybe the new Truck Norris cam on a 4.8. Yeah, Taj, that might be good for a a liter bike. Makes a lot of power. Actually, I don't think now that you mention it, Tenor, Blue Max might have been even, was that World War I? Were they flying biplanes and stuff? It's been a long time since I've seen the movie. I think it's World War I. Yep, there you go. Yeah, we don't even use it. I don't even check the content when we run it. E85 is a fad. It's just gonna go away. I've not run any BMW motors on the engine dyno. And even if E85 costs the same as pump gas, or even a little bit more than pump gas, it's still like buying race gas, and race gas is what, $10 or $20 a gallon now. What difference would I see if I use a turbo with a single plane Victor Jr. versus a Parker frontal web? In my testing, the Parker frontal web is usually a little bit better NA, but we're talking about less than a pound of boost difference, so I think it would be irrelevant. Russell, yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with the lift. It has more to do with the duration. And a 459 or a 469 cam is probably going to need a converter, even in a 6-liter. The supercharger, Chase, is going to be probably easier to put on your 4.6. And I ran my supercharger, my Vortec, on my 5-liter for, I don't know, 70,000 miles or so. What's your take on not running a balancer on a 671 blower motor? You should definitely run a balancer. Your question might be, should you run a damper? And that would be a different thing. You have to run the balancer if you're gonna, otherwise the motor's not gonna run very well. It's gonna be very shaky if it's an externally balanced motor. If it's a damper, that's a different thing. We've run motors without dampers, but I still don't recommend it. Blue Max funny car. Yep, that's a different thing. The E85 doesn't require a richer mixture. Actually, we run 11.7 or 11.8 with E85 on a gas scale. It just requires more fuel to get that mixture because the original stoic value is different. I haven't done any work with VK56 on the Nissan stuff. Would there be any necessary modifications? You need to do, you'll have to have bigger injectors, a bigger fuel pump, and you'll obviously have to tune it. I would recommend an intercooler as well. the Alex Jones. I think Alex Jones is in trouble here. He lost a big lawsuit, I think. The whole set HX35 on a Nissan K24E. 250 horsepower flywheel will be, you might be near the surge line on an HX35 with that motor. That turbo will support a lot more power than that, right? How about a test of 50-50 water meth mix on a turbo application? We ran that for Engine Masters. We ran water meth on it and compared it to an intercooler, and it wasn't even close. It's cold up here in Weed. That's in Northern California. Your 280 cam and mild ported peanut port heads will work with a blower on it. We're coming out with more Turbo 2.2 videos after we run the Turbo 2.2 on the engine dyno. I haven't done any Enforcer AFR heads yet. Is a boosted blow through car pretty easy to tune for the street? It was easy to tune for wide open throttle. Now I don't know about also tuning it for drivability. Chase, no problem. Cemetery, thank you very much. Always appreciated. I got some, I'm going to have some bills to pay on the 2.2 and the 2.5. Got some broken stuff. Will 110 race gas with 92 octane mix 50-50 work with 20 pounds of boost or so? It will with very, very low timing and a good intercooler. If you're running 28 pounds, you should run 110 at least. We run 118 when we run that much boost. Yeah, some places you can't get E85. Yeah, Tim, that's what I was thinking. 250 horsepower on that motor, on that big a turbo, that's not going to be the right choice for that combination. If he was trying to make twice that, then it would be okay. Or even 400 at the tire, then that probably would be okay. But Matt Mullen, what's up? Happy Thanksgiving weekend for all the Canucks in the room. I haven't done any electronically assisted turbocharging. I mean, like they do in Formula One? E85 plus nitromethane. Does nitromethane mix fairly well with E85? Normally they mix it with M1, right? Tenner's throwing out uncle jokes. The weather's beautiful here today, Matt. It was nice. We had a soccer game today. It was probably, I don't know, 75 or 80 or something. Fast EFI 2.0 versus Terminator testing. I don't know why you'd. There's no test that I could run of those two things because both of them will give you the air, fuel, and the timing that you want on the motor. So they'll both make the same power. Torque Monster, an intercooler obviously is a good idea, and then make sure you get cold air to the inlet of the supercharger. So don't let it draw air from in the closed engine compartment. Jeff. Oh, so you're talking about that's an LSA blown thing? Have you used M85? I've not used any methanol. It's daring young men and their flying machines. That's right. Those magnificent men. Yeah, we know it doesn't mix very well with gas. I just wondered if the percentage of gas that's in E85 is going to affect the mixing of those two things. When looking at air to water efficiency wasn't acceptable, inlet air increase. To give you an idea, when we on our air to water intercooler, our charge temperatures actually go down during our run at Bonneville. So that's what you want to do. That's hard to do though. It's harder to do on a quarter-mile pass. We run ice water in ours. So it starts out when you're just idling and stuff, the temperature is obviously hotter. But as we go, even though our boost is fairly consistent once we get into boost, once we can go to wide open throttle, we're at about, depending on, we're running at somewhere between 12 and I think we run as much as 17 pounds. And we can have charge temperatures that are like, you know, between 58 and 68 degrees basically at the end. And that works really well. Harder to do though on a drag race application where you don't have like, and we're not running a lot of power. I mean, that's probably only, I don't know, 500, excuse me, 500 or 550 or something at the tire, and not a lot of boost and a lot of ice and good pumps and everything. But you should, I don't know how much boost you're running. the air you have going into your turbo is going to affect that. And then your intercooler is going to affect that. The temperature of your transfer medium is going to affect that. So you got a lot of things that are happening there. And then obviously how much ever boost you're running. If you're running 10 pounds, it's not, it can't be very high. If you're running 20 or 30 or 40 or 50, then obviously you can get a lot higher. Torque Monster Nitrous, I don't know what that is. Well, self-learning EFI work with boost and make proper corrections under boost without tuning. Well, technically, Cody, that is tuning if it's making the corrections. That's what tuning is. But no, I haven't seen that. I've only ever tested one setup where we've put it on and have it self-learned. And I did it at 7 pounds. It was an old MSD one. And I was nervous the whole time. And I probably will never do it again. I don't even run my motors when we're running them on the dyno. I don't even run them in closed loop. I don't allow them to make corrections. I make the corrections myself, and then we make another run, and it's in open loop. You got any people or companies I can get consultation with about header lengths? Is this a header length for a turbo application? If it is, you shouldn't be worried about it. And if it's for an NA motor, the guys at Burns, and there's stuff online that you can look at, but I don't think you're going to get what you're looking for, though. So you want to make tri-wise. You need to copy what Honda did on their tri-wise. That would get you really, really close. Would a 351M with a turbo get better fuel mileage towing than a 400 with a turbo with running at similar PSI? I would think that a smaller motor would be theoretically better fuel mileage. I don't think you'd see any difference between those two. I'm going to throw some acetone in the mix. Dre, I've never run a fuel cooler. I take that back. I have one time on the supercharged big block Chevy truck that I was telling you about, Blue Max. We ran a fuel cooler on that. It was an air to liquid because we were using basically this was I think it was an old oil cooler that we ran our fuel through from the pump up to the carburetor because we were getting vapor lock. So we put a cooler up in front of the radiator, and we also wrap the fuel line because it gets really, really hot in the engine compartment, especially near the exhaust headers and stuff, especially if you're going up a hill, and especially if you happen to be like we did, driving through Needles, California when it's 122 degrees pulling a trailer, which is really, really dumb. So we did cool that, but I've never done it like the guys at Engine Masters did, where you run a container with ice and spiral the stuff in there. And I actually want to do it differently. I don't want to just do it with tubing, because tubing, in my opinion, doesn't have enough surface area. I want to put actual, like an oil cooler, and we'll put that in ice water so we can maximize the surface area, maximize the cooling. And according to their testing, they got quite a bit of power from cooling the fuel before it went into the motor. So I want to try that. Matt, you're going to get that 347 running good. Yeah, the Nissan 5.6 and also the Toyota version of those too would be good. Yeah, we have closed loop on the Holly. Like I said, I don't use it very often. The one time that we will do it is if I want to, for whatever reason. A new Brule likes to do this, is he likes to put it in closed loop in all the drivability portions of the map. So he'll just program in whatever air fuel he wants, and then then all you have to do is just kind of rev it through there, and you can watch it kind of go in and do its thing and trim that, and then you make the changes, and then you do it, and you make the changes, and pretty soon it's only correcting 1 or 2% or something, and then it's all good. I usually don't worry about that. I start out with a known map shape, let's say, and then I'll adjust it globally and get where I want it to be. And then I only care, like I said, about the does the thing idle at like 1,000 RPM? Yes, it does that. And then does it transition from there up to start the run at 2,000 RPM or 2,500 RPM or 3,000? And then it only goes, across. If it's an NA one, it only goes across in the 95 to 100 kPa first, or the top 2 or 3 cells, depending on how I've scaled it. Or if it's a turbo one, does it transition up through the area that I want it to? And then hopefully the boost is staying fairly flat. Again, it stays within 2 or 3 cells, and then we do that. And then if we go up and boost, we have scaled all the rest of the map numbers so that, hey, look, when we go up and boost, it still stays at 11.6 or 11.7 and does what it's supposed to. And then on a centrifugal blower, does it go from idle to load? And then that transitions up at an angle. So it starts out at 2 or 3 pounds, down near 100 kPa, and then goes up to, let's say, 1 bar at the end or 2 bar at the end, where it's running 14 or 15 pounds. And then it transitions through the different boost numbers at the different RPMs, and you just got to make sure that you tune those. I usually don't do the whole map, but you can, and you can leave it in closed loop to do a lot of that stuff. Fast, what's going on? It's costing you money to chat. Oh, you guys just got back from dinner in Napa. Dan, are you local? Turbo on your 6 liter is a good idea. Is a Toyota Cup engine based on a it's not based on a 1UZ or anything, right? Those are dedicated motors like the rest of the Chevys and Fords and stuff, right? Yeah, Ryan, I remember having a discussion with Jerry Magnuson way early on about all these custom blower cams before I really understood what was going on as well as I needed to, and him telling me about all these custom cams that are really going to make the blower wake up. And I'm thinking the whole time I haven't talked to him, I'm like, dude, you're Jerry Magnuson, and I know what the name is, and I know that what you've done, but what you're saying doesn't make sense to me, because we can put a better camshaft in it, and I understand getting a better cam in it's going to make more power, but ultimately the blower size is going to kind of dictate what goes on. But he's insisting that no, you can put magic cam timing in this Roots blower and make it do magic things. And the whole time I'm thinking, I don't really think that this is true. Richard, where can you find a video on Blue Max? Did you look up the movie? Do a search for Blue Max with George Papard, and then you probably can watch it on Netflix or anything. I don't run a Holly Terminator. I run a Holly HP and a Dominator, but I think that the tuning is probably the same. Yeah, and having big map corrections, like I've seen guys put stuff together where they allow 50% changes. Well, if you're making 50% adjustments, something went wrong. And the other reason that I don't like closed loop stuff is if something does go wrong, if you lose a spark plug or a plug wire and you have huge corrections available in there, it's going to throw everything off, because it's going to start now adjusting for the mechanical or electrical problem that you have, and you can't tune around that stuff. And if it's not under closed loop, it won't do that, obviously. Which generation LS is the 2003 Chevy 1500? Mine's a 2002. That's a Gen 3. And more than likely, if it's a 1500, it's going to be a 4.8 or a 5.3. If it's a 5.3, it's going to be an LM7. And if it's a 4.8, it's going to be an LR4. Progressive fueling for a carburetor. This is all on the power valve. I have two GT45s I'm going to use on my small block Chevy. How much horsepower would be safe with the ring gap opened up and a stock short block? I think you're going to be disappointed with that. What I would do if I were you is put one GT45 on your small block and see how that turns out. Two GT45s are 1,500 horsepower with a turbo or more, and they're going to be laggy on your small block if it's stock. So take your small block, I don't know what heads are on it, but put a cam in it and then run one GT45, and that can get you 700 horsepower or more, and see how you like that. And it's going to be much more responsive. So in the fun area, you're going to get an awful lot more power. Every cam is a blower cam. That's right. Gen 6 for piston upgrade tutorial. You don't need to change those pistons. Those pistons are already perfect. Why is this person being a knucklehead? Yep, he's out. I didn't realize Dulcich had new teeth. Yeah, I haven't run a Ford V10 yet. Not on the engine dyno. There's a C4 over in the wrecking yard that we go to. It's a Crossfire car. Yeah, we have a couple of Cup engines over at West Tech, or they do, and it's amazing how much work they went to lighten stuff up. I mean, they're real works of art. Fox body versus the world. I need to get my Fox body running. He was reported. Matt, that's why you're here. You need to ask the question. There, David, I don't know about which ones to run because I don't know about specific chassis fitments for headers. I would run an 1 3/4 header on that, a long tube one. I don't know what engine's going to be next. I'm probably going to run the Dodge would be the next one, the Magnum again. A Vortex small block Chevy throttle body. The throttle body, I think, is good size, right? Yeah, the 19-pound injectors aren't going to support a lot. Dean, who don't you care for? Oh, I thought you were talking about a C4 Corvette. Have you ever built an old school 454? I built lots of Mark IV 454s and stroker versions of them. How much can you make from them? The sky is the limit depending on how much money you want to spend. You know, you're running two AVS 650s on a 427 tall deck 871. I don't know if those are gonna, maybe they'll be enough. I've never tested a Godzilla motor, so I don't have really any firsthand experience on them. UPS, you can do it with the Terminator just as easy. I think the Terminator is just a lower cost version of the HP stuff. The Morty, the Ford V10 does underboost what every motor does. So it does whatever it does NA, and then it just gets multiplied under boost. So it's not going to respond magically to boost and somehow make better than this formula. More than likely, it would make less than the formula, but it will do what they all do. A 3.7 V6 accurate. Those take well to boost. Nope, no Godzilla in my Fox body. Turbo guards, is that some sort of air inlet deal for in front of the turbo, like screens or something? Yeah, Evan does a lot of good stuff on his channel. And he's in good with the Ford guys and stuff. So if they were doing something on the Godzilla stuff, it would be interesting. But we know that ported heads and cams and all of that stuff is going to work on that motor. There is a difference between the Mark IV and Gen 5 stuff. The Gen 5 is all 4-bolt, and the Mark IV is 4 and 2-bolt. And then the water passages are different in the blocks. And the mains are different. One's a 1-piece, one's a 2-piece. Rocky, yeah, words of wisdom for your first-time boost user. Put good fuel in it to begin with, and then don't run a lot of timing. Sneak up on the timing. Does having a lot of valve overlap hinder boost or nitrous? Nah, that's too generic of a statement. We run cams that have overlap in them all the time with boost and with nitrous. I don't know about I don't know if the Terminator has trans control, because the HP doesn't. The Dominator does, but like I said, I've never done anything on the Terminator. Yeah, a mesh cover over the turbo inlet. I'd be surprised that it has much of a restriction. You'd have to measure it and see what the surface area is. Can you reuse head gaskets? We use reused MLS head gaskets all the time. Yeah, and the Gen 6 is a hydraulic roller block. The Gen 5 can be a hydraulic roller block because it's set up for that. They just didn't do it. Most of them were flat tappets, and there may have been some during the transition period right before they went to Gen 6 stuff. What time would you start with? I don't know how much timing your combination makes NA. I almost always run the motors NA. That way we can figure out how much power it makes and not hurt it, and make sure that it's not leaking, that it runs good before we put boost to it. And then when we put boost to it, we know that we're starting with a good motor, And also we know what the NA timing was. And then I retard the timing, obviously, accordingly. I would start off with good gas and start off with 20 degrees of total timing. And then you're going to go up from there. It's going to keep making power beyond that. We normally end up, if we're running a supercharger like that on a small block Chevy, as long as it doesn't have Vortec heads on it, which want less timing than other stuff, but a conventional small block head or small block Ford head or whatever, we normally on those blower things would eke up to about 30 degrees of total timing if the motor wants like 35 or 36 degrees. How would you describe the cam and engine characteristics between a 108 LSA and a 114? The 108 is going to have much less idle quality. So the idle vacuum is going to be much, much lower on a 108. Typically, a 108 is going to make more power through some portion of the curve. Could be all of it, depending on what RPM you're running it to. But a wider LSA tends to make more power on the top, and a tighter LSA tends to make more power below where that one makes it. The 114 will definitely have a better idle quality. An RPM air gap will work really well. Put injectors in it. That's a good intake manifold. And the throttle body, I think, is probably oversized. Just if you can measure it and tell us what size that is, we have an idea on flow rate. Yeah, I don't know about the strength under boost on the V10s. I don't think you need Escuela. If you're running boost, you're not going to want to run 34 or 36 degrees on a boosted thing. That's going to be way too much. Do I need to use a boost reference on a quick fuel carburetor? Yes, you do. You need to have the fuel going to the carburetor to feed the carburetor needs to be like 7 pounds higher than whatever the boost is. Otherwise, it's not going to fill the bowls. Would you put a mildly built 454 up to an LX? I don't know what you mean by put it up to an LSX. Or yeah, Matt, you'll be really happy when you get it running if it's got boost. Even if it's got low boost, it's going to make a big difference in power. Boost reference on a Holly Edelbrock carburetor, you don't need boost reference. You need boost reference on any blow-through carburetor, because if you don't have it, you're going to run out. The fuel is not going to go into the carburetor. I can't go over progressive fueling right now. Maybe on another thing. And if you send me an email and ask me specifically what you're talking about, we can go over that. Are you talking about transition from the idle circuit to the main circuit? I don't know if I'd push a big block to these LS power levels. You need the fuel pressure regulator to be referenced. That's what's going to dictate how much fuel flow or what the fuel pressure is going to the carburetor. Did you know that MPR changed up their GT45? I don't know who MPR is. Is it anything like NPR? First of all, Riot, you don't probably need 2 turbos to run 700 horsepower on a small block. There's a lot. You have a lot of questions. So you should try to break them down one at a time and just ask them. Can you get away with pump gas on any 454 12 now 20 compression? Yeah, you can with a really big camshaft. Jonathan, the header upgrade from 1 5/8 to 1 3/4 might be more beneficial when you add the blower. Or Escuela, were you talking about draw-through superchargers, like putting the blowers on top of the carburetors? I mean, putting the carburetors on top of the blowers? There is a formula for figuring out how much power a throttle body will support. You can get a fairly good idea on if you airflow test it, and then whatever the flow rate is. If you take, I think it takes about the number we use is 1.5 CFM for each horsepower. So you can get a fairly good idea at that. So if you have a 900 CFM throttle body, it will support 600 horsepower. In reality, it would support a little more than that because it doesn't just cut off there. What happens is you start having vacuum between the throttle opening and the rest of the motor, and it will have more draw. So it'll continue to make power. You'll just be losing what you could have if you have a bigger throttle body. Impure. You're missing an S in there, hot mess. It's max speeding. I've seen a few of the V10s in yards. Not a lot of them, though. There's no speeding in max speeding rods. Is a Jegs crate small block 454 a happy medium? Again, there's not one that's better and best and all that. You just pick the thing that you want that does the thing that you want it to do. There's lots of options out there. The lift is not what you want to do, SoCal Classics. The thing that's going to allow you to run lots of static compression on a motor is to put lots of duration in the camshaft and effectively overlap in it. That's going to change your dynamic compression. So if you have a 12-to-1 454, let's say, or a 468 if it's poured over, and you put a 220, 230 cam in it at 50, that's not going to work very well. I mean, it's going to work, but it's not going to work as well as you want, and it's not going to work on that pump gas. But if you put a 12-to-1 motor and it's 278, 284 at 50, that's going to work on pump gas. Okay, guys, 1 more minute. Cody, I don't know. I don't have an answer for the factory Ford HO motor for extended period of time. We ran mine at about 430 or 440 at the tire at wide open throttle for 42 minutes. So that's as much extended time. And I ran that motor for 70,000 miles with a blower on it. So it lasted a long time. I don't know about, I've heard guys tell me all kinds of, and this will be the last question for tonight. I've heard guys talk about all kinds of crazy power numbers, but I don't do longevity testing other than the motor that I had in my car, and we ran it around everywhere. But we don't really do durability testing, so it's hard to answer that question. Okay, one more question. How much horsepower will porting some GT40 heads gain over non-ported? If they're properly ported, you probably could support another 30 horsepower or more with proper porting. But if you don't properly port them, you might even lose power. Thank you guys all for showing up. I've got to get going. I will be back tomorrow. I'll have the video up where we compare the different cams on the 5-liter stuff with different kinds of boost. Awesome stuff. Thanks for showing up. I'll see you tomorrow.